All right. Let's just dive right in here. We're talking about prompting today. I believe prompting is going to be a big part of our IP moving forward, both for any business, but as well as us as individuals. Being able to prompt and get LLMs to assist in doing a task is going to be a really big deal. So for example, I'm going to show you a prompt at the end of this that I use as part of my process to design all of the webinars that we do. And I do 2 live classes every single month of covering different topics, and the entire process from creating the deck, creating what the whole live class is going to be about, all the promotional emails that we send out, the LinkedIn promo, the reminder emails, all of that, I have an AI assisted process to do that entire thing. And I am still heavily involved. It takes me time. I have to go and review things. I have multiple steps and checkpoints. I view AI as like, really, we're building this factory. And if you think about how factories operate, you have a part of the factory that does one thing. It comes out and you have a human that reviews it and looks and is like, oh, okay, is this good or is this not good? And then boom, goes to the next section. And then what happens there? Does something else. Then there's another human that does a check and make sure that things are operating effectively. And at a certain point, you start removing the human because you get that portion of the factory so good at producing that one part that you no longer need a human that you have to pay to stand there and like look at it. That's where we're at with AI today. Is we want to almost build out our own little factory. Us as a human is going to be the human check. And then the prompts that we develop are the actual machines that create part of the work that we need to get done. The kind of the mindset I want you to have here is, how can I get AI to make me a lot faster at doing something I'm already doing today? That's ultimately the goal. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Quick housekeeping beforehand. How this is going to be structured, and there's a lot of new folks here, so I'll just give you a quick rundown and then we're going to jump into the material. How this is structured is very, very simple. We are going to dive into content. Like I said earlier, it's going to be very, very actionable content. I'm giving you exactly how I go about writing prompts. I'm also going to give you an example of a prompt that I use in production, walk through why it's structured the way it is. And then I'm going to open up for Q&A. What I ask is that if you could please ask questions during me going through the material, that's the best time. Don't save them till the end. Because what I do is I scroll to the top of the chat and I go down and I try to answer every single question. Okay, cool. Love it. Let's dive right in here. Here we are. How do I look? Oh, no. You lucky, lucky kids. You got a little sneak peek. Bad. No. All right, now we're back. Oh, I don't like that. I like it like this. Do I? Maybe I'll go here. What do you guys think? All right, cool. So let's jump in here. I need to pull out how do I switch slides? Okay, cool. All right, great. Let's jump right in. So we are talking about how to write AI prompts that 10x your output. Okay, that really 10x your output. So I'm going to ask everybody in the chat here. When it comes to using AI, what have you experienced? Has it been a good experience, like, hey, I use it for everything? Or has it been more of like, sometimes it works well for me, but sometimes the output isn't all that great? And are some of you just like, hey, I kind of gave up on trying to get it to do work really, really well? Just give me a little sense of what your experience is here when it comes to using AI as part of your work, not just to answer little questions that you have here or there, but to help you actually get your work done. So Lauren here says about 50-50. I think this is probably the most common that I see, where people are like, hey, sometimes it really helps me. Other times the outputs aren't all that great. That's very, very common. And that's where I really want to work, is how do we get top 1% outputs from AI? And right here, I use it to write app scripts to automate my processes. That's great. Good for repetitive work. Still needs human element at the end of the tunnel for QA. Yeah, totally. And I'm actually we're not going to be covering too much in this class. This is part of a series. There's multiple. Last time we did this, we focused on how do you identify what to work on with AI, or what to try to add AI as part of your workflow. That was the last live class that some of you guys came to. This one's on writing prompts. The next one I'm going to be walking you through, and it's going to be less frameworky like I'm going to do today. It's going to be more behind the scenes on how I use it and build these things out, where I bring in that QA throughout multiple steps of the process, and I break apart a task into a lot smaller chunks than you might think one would, in order to get even better outputs. Yeah, better at tasks than creating images. Yeah, definitely. It depends. Actually, Nano Banana is crazy. I don't know if you guys have used that, but okay, let's get back on track here. All right, the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about what AI is good at. So one of the challenges that comes up is, and I've worked with hundreds of founders, and a lot of it is around AI and how we're using AI today. It's been a very, very important topic for everybody. And what I see are the same problems come up over and over and over again when you're trying to implement AI. It can be difficult to get AI to do the task you want it to do. And the more complex or the more expertise required in order to do a task, the harder that it becomes. And the first step you have to consider is, what is AI good at doing? I'm going to walk you through 3 things that AI is really good at doing. This is not an exhaustive list. AI is great at doing a lot of things. Specifically, when I'm talking about AI, too, I'm talking about LLMs, large language models. I'll use the term AI because it's a little bit more accepted. And for those of you who are hardcore AI nerds, you're going to see me. I use some more basic terms just so everybody can understand what we're talking about. I want to talk quickly about, like, just out of the box, what are some things that AI is really, really good at, which are good places for you to start and implementing it into your own workflow. As you get better and better at prompting, it widens the amount of things that you're able to do. And you can you can use it to do a lot of different tasks. But these are things out of the box that it's really good at. The first is analyzing large amounts of text or data quickly. So any task where you need to review a lot of text, and this could be from a document or a call that you're on. So I do a lot of stuff with call transcripts, for example, a lot of stuff with call transcripts. I find call transcripts of sales calls, of maybe client calls, stuff. I find that very useful context for the AI, and we can do a lot of things with that information. The next thing here is generating new content. This is probably what a lot of you guys use it for: writing job descriptions, meeting notes, client emails, reaching out to your customers, maybe marketing emails too. These type of thing, it's really, really good at out of the box. And then finally here, predicting outcomes from patterns. That's what LLMs are. Pattern machine, right? It's predicting what the next most probable word is based on its weights and how it was trained. So it's really good at predicting outcomes from patterns. I find that AI is fantastic at predicting what could happen and suggesting the best next action. So it's really good as a strategic partner. I'd be curious if you use AI for like as a thought partner. Type in yes in the chat if you use AI as a thought partner. Okay, so here's the question that you all need to answer. And if you don't have an answer to this, I'm going to show you how, but we're not diving into this because we did this on our live class 2 ones ago. So you can go to the website, you can watch that, and I dive deep into this. But you got to answer the question, what should I use AI for? And what we do to figure this out is what's called the AI opportunity matrix. For those of you who are on the class where I covered this, you know what this is already. I'll do a quick summary, but what you want to do if you want to watch that is you go to voris.com/events. You'll see all of our future events. You can also click on past events and watch some of the previous ones. What you're doing is you're going to create a little matrix here. On the x-axis, you have frequency. On the y-axis, you have time. And just first step, write out all of the tasks that you do on a daily basis. Second step, you plot them here. How much time do they take and how frequently does it come up? And when you have all the tasks that you do as a team and how often it comes up and how much time it takes you to do it, what you end up with is a clear set of things that you know that you can use AI to help enable you to go faster. That's ultimately the key thing that you want here. Again, go to voris.com/events. You can catch the like full detailed breakdown on how to do this really well, but at a high level, frequency, time, you try to find the things that take a lot of time and happen pretty often that you can use AI to help you be faster at it. So now I want to start to transition into, how do I write an effective prompt? Really, really important question to answer, obviously, and also a very difficult question to answer. You're going to see a lot of stuff on writing prompts, a lot of stuff. My favorite ones are ones that they're like, hey, you are a B2B marketing strategist. And I think it's fine to do that, by the way. You're giving it an expertise. But I just love the, like, your goal is to create marketing emails. Like, don't hallucinate ever. Like, all of this stuff. It's like cracks me up with some of the prompts that I see online. Just like, this is somewhat hyperbolic, but it's true. Like, everyone here, I hope you understand that LLMs only hallucinate. That's all they do. It just, was the hallucination correct or not? It's the exact same mechanism that's being used. But anyway, I'm half joking there. Okay, so how do I write an effective prompt? The first thing we need to start with here are just some terms that I'm going to be using throughout the structure that I follow, or the framework that I follow to write prompts. So I want to get a couple of terms together here. First is a prompt is the full set of instructions that describe the task and how you want AI to complete the task. It's a really critical component here. It's the full set of instructions. Okay. Really, really important. There are different types of prompts. There's system prompts. There's a whole bunch of different types of prompts. For our purposes here today, a prompt is going to be our main set of instructions. An input is the details that you as the user give the AI along with the prompt that it will use to complete the task. So you'll have your main set of instructions, that's the main prompt, and then you insert in there some kind of input, a user input. This could be a transcript of a call, marketing material, whatever, some other details that you're providing, whatever you have. And that's going into the prompt that you are instructing the LLM to use within the prompt in order to generate the output that you're looking for. And then that brings us to output. And output is what the AI delivers to you as the completed task based on your prompt and input. Okay, so these are the terms you're going to see me use. Give me 1 second. I have a little technical thing pop up here. Let me just make sure that this is okay. Yes, it is. Okay, good. Yeah, okay, that's shoot. All right, I think we're in good shape. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So I'm a one-man show, so sometimes errors happen. All right, let's start with the first step here. This is, I use just real quick. It's called the 4D prompting framework. It's directive, data, design, and develop. Those are the four, okay? We're gonna start with step one, which is directive. Here's the thing with, before I get into the parts of directive, here's the thing that you must understand about writing out prompts. You have to give a very clear objective or directive for the LLM to follow. What is its goal and what instructions do you have for it to complete that goal? And you got to be really, really clear here. So there's 3 things that you really need to know about giving the AI instructions. The first is I highly recommend for a lot of prompts, especially if it's a little bit more of a complicated workflow you're trying to have it follow, or you want the quality to be really high, providing step-by-step instructions as if you are delegating to a junior colleague. One of the easiest way to tell if your prompt is good or bad is by asking yourself if you can give it to a junior colleague and they could follow those steps and get to a good output. Next here is focus your instructions on the sequence of actions required to complete the task. So us saying, hey, here is a call recording of a sales call, write me a follow-up email is like, fine, you're going to get an okay follow-up email. But if you want an excellent follow-up email, you're going to break that task down. Step 1, analyze the transcript. Look for all of the pain points that they mentioned and any next steps that happened. Step 2, do this. Step 3, right? And I'll show you an example of this at the end. Really, really important that you focus your instruction around the sequence of actions required to complete the task, which, by the way, in your brain, like, you don't even think of it that way because you're just smart. Like, humans are smarter than LLMs are today. Maybe one day we won't be. It might know more things, like, like math, or not even math. So math is just like media math. It's gotten a lot better recently, though. A great example of this is like, it might know more about quantum physics than you, sure, but it's not smarter than you. General intelligence is still really powerful. And then the final thing here is to be specific about what you want the AI to do. And this comes down to how you chunk your tasks. And I'm going to go back to my analogy. I go back to this quite a bit. I view this as a factory. What are all the different steps to get to the output? And our brains skip a lot of steps because we're smart, but you want to break things down. So an example of this, and I'll show you a prompt at the end that helps illustrate this somewhat, but here's an example of this. For the promotional emails that I have to write for all of the live classes we do, I used to sit down and just bang out a whole bunch of promo emails. It took me forever. It's brutal. And then I started paying somebody $5,000 a month to do it. What I started doing now is having AI do it, but it would come out terrible, like nothing like I would write at all. And I have a whole back end. There's a very technical installation I have to do this really, really well. But I'll give you one piece of that technical installation, which is what I do now is, instead of asking just to write the emails, first I use an LLM to create concepts for each email. And those concepts are like, hey, this specific email needs to be about this topic. Here are some things to include in the email, blah, blah, blah. And then I go through and I review those, and I might add a little bit more context. Like an example that just happened recently is we're doing a live class coming up on hiring sales reps. And I have a blog post on interview questions that I really like. So when the concepts all came out, one of the concepts was around interview questions. I'm not just going to let the LLM guess what interview questions I like. I have a list of questions that I like. So I gave it the blog post. I just shoved it in there and it worked out well. I did do a lot of editing because I didn't want to overload the context window with stuff that isn't that useful. We'll talk about that in a different step here. But still, I gave it a lot of the direction. So then when the email came out, I was like, oh, this is killer because it covers all the questions I like. I had a little descriptions in there from the blog post of why I like the questions, and it came out really, really good. So that's just an example of being really specific. Just create the concepts. I review the concepts and then I pass it to the next prompt. Each concept goes to the prompt individually, and that's the one that writes the actual emails. And we stitch this all together we use make.com primarily. Okay, so here's a quick self-check question for you. If I gave these exact instructions to a junior colleague, could they complete the task without asking for clarification? If the answer to that question is yes, you are in great shape. Your prompt's probably going to do pretty well. Let me give you a bad example here. This is a bad example of a directive, and this is a small piece of a directive. I'll show you in the example how like these get pretty long, but I just want to show you like a good and a bad example. So here's a bad example. Analyze the following transcript and consolidate all of the client details or the client's details and create a report that includes all of the details about the client and the roles that they are hiring for. This is a very common prompt that people would write, something similar to that. They just kind of like write a couple sentences, hey, do this thing, and here's a transcript, right? Here's a good example that improves on that one. I'm not going to say that this is the best possible way to do it. I'm just going to show you a better example of what I just showed you. Your objective is to distill a transcript of a new client intake call into a report that includes the following. 1, selling points of the role, what that means. 2, missing details needed for recruitment, benefits, vacation, blah, 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 details about what that means. 3, a cleaned up section of notes, use direct quotes, timestamps, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. Way more descriptive. And guess what? If I'm a junior colleague, my output's going to be a lot better if I have these types of instructions versus if I had the other one. That's the idea. Okay. Now let's go to step number 2 here, which is data. What data are we going to be giving the LLM? Another way to think about this is context. So data in my world might be literally a data set, which I do use it a lot for, or it might be a call transcript like we just talked about before. You really want to be thoughtful about what data you give to the LLM. And I'll give you an example here in a minute. 3 things you need to know about giving AI context. Only give the AI background information it actually needs. Include details about how to structure the output. This is a critical one. There is a proper structure for your outputs, and you want to tell the LLM how you want that structured. If not, it's just going to do whatever it kind of thinks that you want. And sometimes that's good too. Like maybe that's what you want, but generally, even if you do it that way, at a certain point you go, okay, this is the way I actually like it. So you have consistency in your output structure. And then finally have examples of what the input is and then the best output. Here's something that you might not have heard about when it comes to giving examples to LLMs. What I do is I don't just give examples of something that's good. And actually type into the chat if that's like how you use this in prompts that you write today, or if you've been told to do this, where you just give an example of it good, like a good example for it to look at so it kind of knows roughly what you want. Just type in yes if you've given that, if you've either used it now or you've been told you should use it. What I also do is I take it a step further and I say, hey, here's the good example. Here is the input that I gave that resulted in this good example. And that input is typically reverse engineered as if an LLM got that input and provided this output. But both of these are usually human derived. So I have the output, hey, here's a perfect output for you as a good example. And here's the input that I provided to get that output. And the LLM did this. Look how great it is. In reality, the human did, but because you're giving it what it received and what the output is, and that's a good example, it kind of figures out what the relationship between those are, and then gets it to a better output. So have examples of what input you gave as well as about best output. So here's a self-check question for you. What critical information would a new team member need to know to complete this task successfully? All right, let me give you a bad example here. I see this a lot, by the way, what I'm about to show you. Here's a copy of a book on marketing. Use this book to help me write great email copy. And where I see this the most, by the way, is with custom GPTs. It cracks me up. They're just like shoving in every marketing book that they've ever used into custom GPT, and then they use that. That's not terrible. It'll be okay. It's still more like thought partnerish in mindset. I want task completion. That's how I'm thinking of this stuff. I don't want something just to chit chat with. I want something that does the work for me. That's the dream, right? I don't want to do the work. You do the work. So this is a bad example of what data to provide. You're giving me an entire book and you want it to use that book to help me write great email copy. Why does it need the whole book? Type in yes or no in the chat if you're familiar with what context window is as it relates to LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude. Just type yes or no if you're familiar with context window and the impact of context window. Here's a good example of data while you guys are answering that question. Here is a section of a book about marketing that provides a framework for writing great email copy. Use this. So instead of giving the whole 50,000 word book, just give it the one section that covers how to write great email copy. That's way better because the LLM can work with it better. So, wow, no. I am shocked. Oh boy, you guys came to the right class. You came to the right AI nerd, that's for sure. Wow. Ooh, this is a critical concept. Okay. Type in yes or no to the, not to make everyone feel bad. I just was expecting some yeses, and maybe the yes people haven't commented yet. But geez, if you're there, please tell me. Okay, so quick background on context window. Have you ever had the experience, type in yes or no if you've had the experience where you're like working with ChatGPT and you have a really long conversation with it. It kind of like forgets the old stuff. Yeah, Lauren's like, we dumb. No, you're not. You're seeking knowledge. But yeah, you're talking long thread with ChatGPT, and then like it kind of forgets things that you said earlier or doesn't use that stuff. You're like, what the hell's going on? Type in yes or no if you've had that experience. Okay, some people have. Yes. Okay, cool. Good. The reason why I'm asking you this is because this is a great example of context window. The LLMs can only keep within its context window. So the number of tokens, but I'm going to use words. I'm going to convert it to words just to make this easier. Tokens is how LLMs use it, but words, think of it as words. And I'm just going to use fake numbers here. Let's say, so every LLM has a limit to how many words that it can kind of like keep in its mind, in its memory, the short-term memory at any given time. So like ChatGPT, like 250,000 characters. I think now it's up, it might even be 350,000 characters. Gemini, I think is at 1 million. Grok, for fast that just came out last week is at 2 million, if I remember right, of words or tokens technically, but we'll just use words for now. But just keep the math really simple. Let's say you're using an LLM whose context window is 100,000 words. Well, 2 books is 100,000 words. Each book, I've written 3 books. 2 of them are around 50,000 words. The other one's shorter. You put those 2 books into an LLM, it's using for it to use all that information. It's filling up its context window. And if you have 100,000 context window, it can't use all that information. So it's really important you're thoughtful about how many details you give. And that's why if you talk really long in the thread with ChatGPT, eventually just things fall off. It's because it's falling out of its context window. So it's really, really important that you understand how much information you can give an LLM. So somebody just said here, shout out Grok here because the context window is so high. A couple of things. So first of all, I'm a big fan of Grok. I wasn't for a while, and then it just is a great model. So now I really like it. Here's what I want to impress upon you. Just because it has a large context window doesn't mean it uses all that context well. So even if you just say like, oh, well, Kyle, how about I just use an LLM with a larger context window and everything's going to be great? Doesn't work that way because we have something, and there's a great paper that came out last year on this called Lost in the Middle. And you have these long context windows, and then there's parts in the middle that are just getting completely lost and not utilized. And there's prompting techniques you can use to get through this. There's also something called context engineering. And this is, I do a lot of this with, we do a lot of, I forgot to even go through my background here. I just realized in this slide, I probably should have kept that in. But I do a lot of sales stuff, right? Like I work with a lot of sales organizations. And side note, guys, quick plug, if you're looking for support building out your sales org, you want to be very like AI forward, like we're a great partner to work with, you can go to our website and book a meeting. But what I want to tell you about is we do a lot of analysis of sales organizations. And so context engineering is something that I spend a lot of time on, almost like architecture, how we organize the context that we're giving the LLMs and when we're using it and what parts of it that we use. And we have to be thoughtful of that because the more context we give the LLM, the less quality our outputs become, even if it fits within the 100,000 words that the LLM will be able to consume, right? Just because you get that loss in the middle thing. So sorry for getting like super nerdy for a second. Can you type in yes or type in yes or no if that made sense, or if you're now more confused? Because maybe I shouldn't even talk about this stuff. I've debated that. I thought about just not talking about it because it is a little bit complicated. I don't know, David, I'll answer your question real quick. Just Google MS Copilot. I don't know how long the context would. Google it and report back. Okay, yes, it made sense, everybody. All right, cool. I hate to get like too technical here, but that's the thing that I think is lost with in the AI crowd. There's a lot of marketers that are just like, oh, here are 7 prompts to do blah, 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 blah. But the AI stuff is a lot more technical once you start actually learning about it and building solutions with it, right? And at some point, I'm going to walk through some of the stuff that we've built, not in this live class, but down the line, because I hired a developer about 7 months ago to build an internal tool for us so we could better work with our clients' sales teams and get stronger insights. And we use a lot of AI. There's a ton of prompts involved in that. And we also built out a lot of processes to help us run our own marketing and then our clients' marketing. So like we're really deep into this stuff. And I have like an AI guy and I have an actual developer. And then there's me, the wizard pulling the strings or whatever. But anyway, I bring this up because as you get more and more technical into the AI stuff, that's when things get better and better and better. And prompting, it all comes down to the prompt at a certain point. Yes, how you manage the content, all of that stuff's important. And at a certain point, that becomes a bottleneck for sure. But the prompting, like your prompts suck, you're not going to get anywhere. Okay, cool. It looks like everyone understands that. I'll give more examples. Also, in 2 weeks, or is it a month? One of our future class, I think it's in a month from now, is going to be a behind the scenes of all of our prompting. And it's, I'm just going to like kind of go behind the scenes. I'm not going to really teach a framework like I'm doing now. I'm going to go behind the scenes and show you everything that we've built out and how it works, just so you can start to see these things in production. But okay, let's continue here because we got step number 3 here, which is design. I'm going to go a little quicker for time. 3 things you need to know about prompt design. 1, have a logical structure to your prompt that a human could follow easily. Okay, I like having things very well organized. I'm going to show you an example in a minute. Define all the rules about what to do and what not to do. Have a section of your prompt that's just rules. Hey, do this, don't do that. And what you'll find actually, comment if you've ever asked an LLM, don't use M dashes, and they still do. Just type in yes if you had that experience. They don't follow all the rules, is my point. In fact, Claude's system prompt leaked a while ago. All these LLMs are like main system prompts leak pretty often. And you could see like copyright's a really big deal to them. In multiple places in their prompt, they're like, do not violate any copyright stuff. And they just have it all over the place because they'll forget, right? So yeah, right here, Maddie's experienced that before. So like, okay, great example here, just to go back. David brought this up. A Microsoft 365 Copilot, 128,000 tokens via GPT-4o. And there's going to be like different things, but so look, it looks like less than 80,000 words. So you got to think about this kind of stuff, right? And design helps you with this too, because you got to be thoughtful of what you're giving the LLM. So anyway, define all the rules about what you want to do. I don't want to get too off the rails here. Then the third thing, organize your prompts in a way where the most important details are in the beginning and the end. And this goes back to what I talked about a second ago, where we were talking about getting lost in the middle. It's such a good paper. I forget the name of it, but if you Google lost in the middle AI paper, you'll find it. If you want to read a technical document, you can. And summarize, long story short, even if you have a really large context window, doesn't guarantee the LLM is going to be using that context window in the way that you want. So a self-check question here for you is, does this prompt make what I want very, very clear? Here's an example of how to use it. Okay, so we have the primary directive up at the top. This is the goal. This is what you'd like it to do. Again, I'm going to give you an example of a prompt at the end. Then you have the context it needs in order to do the job. And by the way, some of you, you're not going to give it any context. You're like, hey, I don't need it to have any. Others, you're going to really want to hone in on the context. Then you have the steps. The steps typically elaborate on what the primary directive is. Hey, to complete this goal, you must follow these steps. Both primary directive and steps fall under our step one, the directive step, right? Having very clear steps on what it needs to do. Side note, sometimes I don't have steps, and we can talk about this kind of stuff if in the Q&A if you'd like to. Sometimes you just don't put steps into your prompts. Next, we have examples. So that's what I was telling you before, the input and the output examples. Then we have rules and reminders. Side note, I typically will put those in the steps section as well. And sometimes I even put it throughout the prompt, depending on how important the rule is, right? Like if you really wanted the LLM never to use M dashes, every fifth sentence should be like, reminder, never use M dashes, you SOB, right? Like that's what you would do, and it probably wouldn't do it, you know? So maybe it still would, but, and then finally here we have output format. Actually, side note, I know it wouldn't do it because a lot of my prompts, I make sure that it doesn't use M dashes and it works. And then, so final thing is output format, how you want that output to look, which we talked about earlier. All right, step number 4 is develop. This is by far the most critical component of creating a prompt that's really powerful and useful and gets better over time. You want to develop that prompt and make tweaks and changes to it to improve it over time. So I'll give you an example of what I do with my team. Every single week we have a prompt review. Side note on my team, I have 3 employees who are phenomenal. They've been building out sales orgs for, Fetty's been doing sales strategy and operations and building out sales teams for 30 years. Ashton's been doing it for like 17. Declan's been doing this stuff for 7, like really, really experienced people. And what's nice is because they're so experienced, they are the right people to review the output from the LLM and say like, that's not quite right. I actually would have said this here instead based on their data. Or I don't quite fully agree with how it assessed this specific sales call. This is what I would do differently. And we take that feedback and we put it back into the prompt. So I'll show you how that flywheel works in a second. 3 things you need to know. 1, look for how your outputs can be better. Okay. Look at the outputs. How can it be better? Make small improvements to the prompt or the context to improve your outputs. Like I said, sometimes you have to kind of change how much context you give it. And then finally, focus on one improvement at a time. One improvement at a time. I do it every single week. Self-check question here. What is the number one thing I could change in my prompt to get a 10% better result? That's how you're thinking about it. This is what it looks like. This is the prompt development flywheel. We look at the output and we decide on an improvement. So one that just happened last week is we have certain prompts that do pretty deep analysis into sales metrics for account executives. And one of the outputs, Fetty on my team was like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of right. But the truth is this other metric here tells you that that's probably not what's happening here, or that metric would also be bad and it's not. Well, that's super important to know. That's 30 years of experience talking, right? The LLM didn't know that. The LLM just spit out, I think it's this thing because it's one metric. And I was able to think of the improvement. Okay, well, what can I add into the prompt? Well, that's pretty simple. If that metric's also good, hey, probably not the right thing to say here. And now that prompt's got a little bit better. And then you test it. And so that was 2 weeks ago. And then this last week, we just did it yesterday during the prompt review. It came out great. And we actually had no feedback. Like the output came out perfectly. So we were like, great, this is now locked in. This is a prompt that we really like. Okay. So let me give you an example. This is a really basic example just to illustrate the point. So before, your objective is to distill a transcript of a new client intake call into a report that includes the following. And if you remember, this is that prompt example I gave you earlier. I highlighted in red, distill a transcript. What we might find by using this prompt is that the reports that are being generated are very like quotey of the transcript because we're asking it to distill. So if you're looking at the report, you're like, gosh, this isn't as actionable as I would like it to be. Well, you can make a little tweak to the prompt. Your objective is to analyze a transcript, not distill it, analyze a transcript of a new client intake call and create a report that includes the following. Same exact thing. It's the only change you make. because that was a problem that you observed. Now, this is a fake example. I'm not sure if this small of a change would genuinely change the output in that much of a meaningful way, but sometimes it does. I have had prompts where I made a minor little tweak to it, had a dramatic impact on the outputs. I've also had prompts where I just ran into this last week actually too, where I like over instructed. And I was like, all right, I'm going to delete all the instructions and just see if that works well. And it worked better than my over instruction one. And then I revisited the instructions and the steps, and I was able to create something that was better than both, right? So you got to think of it that way too. Let me go through an example prompt for you. So this is a little behind the scenes. Again, I am doing this. I'm going to do like a full walkthrough of how we use AI as part of our marketing in a month from now. Go to Voris.com/events if that's something that you want to participate in. Here's a webinar brief. So this is a sample one. This is not a webinar that we're doing, but similar to the one I'm doing now, I guess. How founders should be using AI to increase sales performance. Maybe I did do this one actually, now that I read that. I think I did. Yeah, this is for a real one. It comes up with a core promise, who the target audience is, their pain points, their goals and aspirations, what you will learn, and then concepts for different emails. So, hey, this is what we want for each of the different emails. This email should be about that. This email should be about this. You can see I have this little thing. So this is, and then it creates a table of when all the emails need to be scheduled out. So what happens is I generate this, I review it, I make edits if I need to, which I usually do. I make edits. Reviewing this probably takes me 15 minutes to go through, and I'll make a couple of tweaks here and there. And then it goes to the next step, and we use this to generate everything else that's required, because this is our base, is our webinar brief, right? So how do we create the webinar briefs? Here's the prompt. I'm going to scroll to the top, and you're going to see some similar language. Can I hide this? Okay. So here's our prime directive. You are the webinar revenue architect, a senior direct response strategist with deep expertise, blah, 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 blah. I think this kind of stuff is useful, giving it expertise. You don't always need it, though. It's actually pretty common. I don't use it, but in this case, I do use it because I like this kind of copywriting. And these are your little superpowers. These are important things to me. And then here's the actual goal. Your goal is to craft a webinar campaign brief that will be used by a copywriter to write compelling copy in promoting the webinar. I specifically tell it, which I don't always do, in this prompt, it makes sense, how what it produces is going to be used. In some cases, I'll even put a human copywriter. Then I have some considerations here. This is context, right? Hey, this is the source of the input. Here's the lens that I want you to consider. Always consider the audience lens, the voice and tone that I'm looking for, and then what the deliverable is. A human copywriter, there you go, I used it here. And marketing manager will execute the emails. And then here are the steps. Extract the core ideas, parse the webinar title and bullet list to surface a primary promise, blah, blah, blah. Step 2, draft the webinar brief, and I tell it what the webinar brief includes, right? Step 3, ideate 9 email concepts. Step 4, map to send calendar. Step 5, quality check and polish. Here are the email guidelines. If it's a content promo email versus a direct promo email, do this instead. This is a content promo email. I want for each one of them, email topic, core lesson, webinar. If it's a direct promo, so we're not kind of educating in the email, I want a situational angle, a framing hook, and a focal point. Here are some rules for you. And then here's the output format where I say, hey, I want it formatted just like this. Excuse me. So first of all, seeing this prompt, I'd love to get some feedback. Was it helpful to see an example here? Just type in yes or no. If it's helpful to see an example. I'm going to tell you before we jump into Q&A here, I'm going to tell you something that's really, really important when it comes to this stuff. So this is a great example of develop, our step 4. That prompt I just walked you through, we used for a really long time to help us with the webinars. And then at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm making a lot of these kind of edits. Also, this isn't quite how I want it to be. And I started thinking, I revisited how our architecture on how we could build out all of the stuff we need for the webinar. And I was like, you know what? One, it doesn't make sense for us to do the title and the bullets before the webinar brief. The webinar brief should probably give us title and bullet options that we can use. But for us to come up with those first is a little bit weird. And the second thing was, does it make sense for us to create the email concept bank in addition to the webinar brief at the same time? And ultimately, I decided like it didn't quite make sense to do it that way. And I was running into some like really weird niche challenges because of the way we had it structured. So what did I do? I separated the prompts. So now that prompt looks very different. It's actually split into two different, technically three different prompts. And at first, I type in, hey, this is what I want. And we do this all in Airtable, and Make.com is our back end to like make this flow all work well. Again, we'll do a live class where I teach you that or walk you through how we do it at least. So you have some kind of something to model after. But so now I type in what do I want this webinar to be about, who's it's going to be for. Then it creates the webinar brief. Then I review the webinar brief, and then it creates the concept emails. So what I was running into is sometimes the concept emails were a little off, but it was because the webinar brief was off. So I split the step and I kept myself in the loop. To be clear here, if I were to create all the material I need to create to do each one of these live classes, it takes me 10 to 20 hours to do that. That's why I hired somebody to do it full time, or not their full-time job, but like they're responsible for creating all this stuff. Now it takes me an hour and a half to go end to end, and I do it in chunks. Way, way, way more manageable for me. Way more manageable for me. And when I had somebody else writing all of the copy, I would review their copy anyway. So I was already spending half an hour reviewing all their copy. So now I'm just taking that time, spreading it out across a bunch of different steps, and my outputs are really, really good. So that's how we do things here. We are going to move into Q&A here. Before we do, I have a video for you to watch. I'm going to need to go grab some water. I'm going to lose my voice today for sure. So I'm going to play this video for you, and then I'll be right back. Oh, is this not working here? I might not be able to get water. I don't want to leave you guys silent. Okay, cool. Let's just jump into the Q&A. I'll grab water right after this. I'm going to scroll to do questions. Oh, real quick, actually, quick plug for us. We do not work with very many customers. For those of you who aren't super familiar with our work, I have a team of revenue experts who've been building out sales orgs forever. If you are looking to improve your sales team's performance, or you're building your first sales team, you need some support building it. We work with folks that are really early stage, as well as more sophisticated sales orgs around building out a repeatable sales process. We take a very data-driven approach, very nerdy AI-driven approach as well. And if you'd like to schedule some time to see if it's a good fit, again, the vast majority of people I talk to are not a good fit. We don't work with very many customers. I'm posting a link to book that call. No, I just booked a link to Slack, which is crazy. Let me grab this correct link. If you would like to book a call and see like, hey, this is a good fit for me, you're more than welcome to. Here's the link to do that. Again, I do not work with very many customers. We just don't have the bandwidth to do that. We hold like a pretty light client load on purpose, so we can be really hands-on with the customers that we work with. So this is completely exploratory. I'll also give you some feedback on what I would do if I were in your shoes to improve your sales performance, or if you're building the team for the first time, how to go about doing that. You can go ahead and book that there. Now, I'm going to scroll to the top and see what questions came through. If you have more questions, go ahead and post that. If you are not interested in learning about our offering, that's totally okay. Not a big deal at all. But I do have another request. This survey link I just posted gives me feedback on what you felt about this topic. This was one I was concerned about doing because, as you can tell, a little bit more technical, and I'm not too sure if everybody likes to go this deep into stuff and they prefer I don't know, super simple, higher level stuff. So please give me feedback if you enjoyed this. If you didn't, really helpful for me. It also will give me some more ideas of what topics to cover next. That would be I really appreciate that if you could do that. Thank you. All right, let me scroll through. Is it taking me? Okay, so Brett asked this question early on. Is this typical? It's taking me 45 to 60 minutes to write 2-page elaborate prompts with reference websites. It produces amazing detailed sales plan and GTM strategies. Absolutely, that's typical. you should spend the time to build the prompts that generate an output that's really high quality. The key thing that he says here is it produces amazing detailed sales plan and GTM strategies. Now, you should have one prompt that you can use over and over and over again, right? If you spend an hour to write one prompt and now you can use that prompt over and over, of course it's worth doing. Of course it's worth doing. So yeah, it's great. And that's ultimately what I want everyone to get to. What is something that you do often? Can you do it faster and or better? If the answer is yes, spending the time to think about how you can leverage AI to accelerate high quality outputs is absolutely worth your time. You should be focused on that. It is hard. It takes iteration. It might take you 2-3 hours to get it right. But as you get good at it and better at it, it goes faster and faster and faster. And you can create some really, really powerful stuff. Quick example before I get to the next question. One of the things I use AI for is to help me with my LinkedIn posts and my posts on X. I have a bigger following on LinkedIn though, a lot bigger. And how I do that is I create a lot of content like this. We cut it up into little shorts of me talking about stuff. And then we take the transcripts of those, that short form content, those clips, we take those transcripts and we're able to convert it into a social post. And it comes out exactly what I would write because it's my words, like the transcripts are my words, right? And then I have a multi-step prompting process that keeps the tone and how I speak, as well as add some more structure. And then there's a big edit step, and we have edit examples. It's like really sophisticated how we go about doing that. I bring this up because not everybody has a bunch of clips. So I'm thinking, like, for my clients, how can I help them create content that they can post on LinkedIn so they can build a bit more of a following, and then they can do some more marketing stuff. So what I came up with is we're going to do Q&A style stuff. And I want them to be answering questions about their, that their audience, about their expertise in the audience that they speak to. To do that, I could just tell the LLM, create 20 questions for an expert in B2B SaaS sales or something. And it would do okay. And maybe at a certain point, you'd feel like it's a lot of repetitive questions. But the best questions come from real people. So what we did was we took their buyer persona, we generated 10 character bios as if you would give them to an actor to play the actor. Then we grab randomly one of the character bios and grab one of the topics that the person likes to speak about. So maybe it's B2B SaaS sales, right? Puts those two together and says, hey, you are this character. You are talking to someone who's an expert in this topic. What questions do you have? And because there's a whole character background, you get really, really good questions. Right. So that's how we're thinking about this stuff. It's a little bit different than probably what you've seen before. I want to be really thoughtful about what the process is to get the best possible output. I don't want 20 questions that you would ask a B2B sales expert. I want 20 questions or 3 questions that you, the person watching this, would ask a B2B sales question. That's different. It's not me asking the LLM to come up with 20 questions. The LLM hasn't lived a life. The LLM doesn't run a business. You do. So that's how I think about it. How can I get to top 1% outputs? How can I get better questions? And once you build it once, it works forever. All right, enough blathering. Is this recorded? Not a stupid question, Justin. There's none of those, but I will make fun of them when they come through, but doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means they're funny. Stupid question, but is this recorded? Yes, I don't know when it comes out. My EA manages all that. It'll pop up on Vorse.com/events in past class, and it comes up at some point. I don't know. I forget how long it takes. It's a couple days. Second, I'm going to cough. I do believe you guys ever. To your technical points, okay, right here. To your technical points, does the AI create what appeared to be high-level programming steps that you showed at the end of the marketing copy right? I don't know if I fully understand this question. Does the AI create what appeared to be the high-level programming steps that you showed at the, like, did I use AI to generate that prompt? I don't know about that prompt specifically, but I do. Yeah, I will use AI to create prompts, but you need to know the structure yourself before you can use AI to generate those prompts. But yeah, I do use AI. If that's the question, then I do. Yeah. Of the companies that you work with, how do their teams, ICs, feel about adopting AI into the process? Do you get pushback from them? So, no, I don't. But we don't use it in a really disruptive way. So if you could probably tell just so this could be seem pretty obvious when I say it, but I look at a workflow that's already taking place and I go, okay, how do I add AI to this workflow to make this person more productive? And that might be a salesperson, customer success. We deal mostly with the revenue org, marketing, things like that. And we go, all right, what are they producing? What does that production look like? Can I get an LLM to produce very close to this level? And if I can, then I can use a human just to adjust and then ship. And now that human has a lot more bandwidth to do more stuff. So for example, I have clients where they do webinars, right? And they're like, yeah, we do one webinar a month. I want them doing two webinar a month. I kind of want them doing one webinar a week if we could swing it, right? It just depends on how big your audience is. We used to do one a week and then we switched to once every other week so we can do more promo for each one. Anyway, you're not asking about that, but just so you can kind of understand the journey. So I look at the workflow and I say, how can we improve the workflow? Now, I've never had somebody complain about their job being quicker to do. And especially, you talk about sales reps, especially sales reps, because they have more time to do what you want them doing, which is talking to customers. That's what AI can't do, right? So no, I don't typically get pushback. Where I do get pushback or where I do see pushback, but I don't do it this way, is when founders are just like, hey, team, all of you must become AI enabled now. I want all of you to default to using AI. It's like this, it's not good feedback to give your team. I want to, as the person who runs the organization, to build out AI augmented workflows that they follow that help them do their job better. That also means when that person leaves, there's a workflow sitting there for someone else to take over. That even if they're not as talented as that person, so much of the heavy lifting is done with the LLM that you're getting outputs that are pretty close to what they were doing anyway. Okay, next here. Any tips for reviewing chats in Gemini to build a single prompt from a conversation? Yeah, I mean, what I would do in this case, like let's say you've done a kind of a chat back and forth with Gemini, which, side note, Gemini 2.5 Pro is my favorite model to use. I'm using that mostly. And then I use Grok 4 Fast now quite a bit because it's really quick. That's why it's called Fast. So it's a very efficient model too. I just like the outputs a lot. So I use that a lot too. So if you have a chat back and forth and you're like, hey, could I turn this chat into more of a prompt? What I generally do is I say, hey, I want you to take this chat thread and I'll copy the chat thread over. So I'll do it in a new chat. And I'll say, I want you to take this chat thread, review it, and create a prompt that would help me do this task without me having to go back and forth so much. Here's how I like my prompt structured. And I'll give them either an example prompt or I'll give them like a little overview of how I want it structured. And it's more of a template. Up to you on how to do it. That's how I would do it. Follow-up would be, how many of their ICs in a percentage are already leveraging AI? Are they leveraging it correctly? So it's actually a bit of a problem. AI is being used aggressively by every part of the organization. The quality of that output is very questionable. So in some cases, you're going to have some power users that leverage AI very, very well. In other cases, which is unfortunately more common, they don't use AI very well, but since the AI's output comes out so nice, and it's like, oh yeah, this looks pretty good, it seems on the surface that something good has happened here. But upon further investigation, you realize, this isn't quite right. So what I'm seeing happen a lot is employee A uses an LLM to generate some work. They look at it like, hey, this looks pretty good to me. They ship it to employee B saying, hey, I've done my part. Employee B looks at it and goes, oh geez, well, I need this, gives a whole bunch of feedback. That feedback wasn't necessary if the employee number A had done the work themselves. They would have included those things because they put the thought into it and they know the kind of the workflow and what's happening a lot better. But the output looked fine on the surface. So you're increasing the amount of like back and forths, and it can actually drag down a team's productivity quite a bit because the outputs just aren't that great. It's requiring more feedback. There's more back and forth and it's more bloated. And then in worst case scenarios, the person isn't working with an employee B. Instead, it's just all of their work and no one's really looking at it all that much. And now your internal company wiki or whatever, your company is just developing all of these really shitty materials. I see that quite a bit too. Okay, last question here, and then I gotta go. Any tips for sitting a statistic or finding a case study? Sitting a statistic. Correct that, Lauren, because I'm reading that wrong. A statistic or finding a case study. For example, M&A can cost millions per month in delay costs. Citing. Citing is yeah. Okay, great. So yes, one thing about statistics or like citing, like finding data and citing data. LLMs are really good at search now, and they do a very good job of finding real statistics. There's a time early on where like it would just make up statistics. You're like, this is horrible. Now it actually does a pretty good job. I still double check, but all you have to do is ask it to find the statistic, cite where they got it from, and then you go to those links and you check. I use LLMs for that kind of search quite often. All right, last thing before I go. If you would like to discuss how we can help you build out your sales organization, create a repeatable sales process, whether you're building your first team or you have a team in place that you're that you feel like should be doing better but isn't, there's a link to book a call with me. It's with me, by the way. It's you'll chat with me. We'll have a friendly conversation. I might make a couple of jokes. You're gonna love it. And then if you're like, hey, I would hate to talk to you, I don't blame you. There's a survey that you could take to tell me how you truly feel. The next thing here. Okay, real quick, one more question. Rich, that's a pretty deep question because the answer is yes. One thing that I've been using, so there's a browser, an AI browser called Comet. You can use that with LinkedIn, which is pretty cool. And you can tell Comet like, hey, do this kind of LinkedIn search, grab all of these people's details, put it in a spreadsheet, and it'll actually go and do all those actions for you. It's pretty incredible. So that's the short answer to that question. I got to jump. I have another call back to back here. Sorry, I usually try to go longer. Our next live class is coming up in a month. Voris.com/events for that. Thank you so much. There's a lot you can be doing on a Thursday. You're spending it with me, and I greatly appreciate that. Have a fantastic day, and we'll talk soon. Bye.